really good review papers that have looked comprehensively at the literature on negotiations and women. And they found that before a negotiation, women tend to be more concerned about the reputational risk of negotiating. And it turns out we have good cause to be concerned, because research shows that women who negotiate their salaries are perceived more negatively by their coworkers, and their coworkers say that they're less likely to want to work with them. So why would we want to negotiate our salaries if that's the way that it works, right? Men also are more likely to interpret situations as negotiable. So if we hear about a decision, we tend to think that it's sort of cut and dry, that it's done, it's fixed, whereas men see a little bit of wiggle room. And these two factors together work together to mean that women are just, in some contexts, less likely to negotiate to begin with. Although, those differences in propensity to negotiate disappear when negotiation is framed as asking. So rather than negotiating salary, we're asking for a raise. That seems to change things and make women more likely to come to the bargaining table. When women are in positions of power, because that seems to insulate them from some of the reputational effects of negotiating, and when it's clear that the issue is negotiable. Under these contexts, we see that women are just as likely to negotiate as men, and that women are not punished in the same way that they are when it's not framed as asking, when it's not clear, and when women are in vulnerable positions. So I tell you this because you are all either leaders of your organizations or you're going to be leaders of your organizations, and I want you to think really carefully about how you can create environments where women feel like they can come to the bargaining table, right? And these are some of the ways that we can do that. Negotiation gender also shapes our own expectations for how we'll perform in the negotiation and social expectations of how we'll behave once we're there. Men tend to set higher aspirations going into a negotiation. So if I asked you to set a target price, men would list a higher target price than women do. And this is a problem because we know that target prices are directly linked to outcomes. So when we set higher targets, we reach better outcomes. Men and women both set higher targets against women. So there's an assumption when our negotiation partner is a woman that she's going to be less formidable in some ways, and we become more ambitious. There are also social norms working against us. Men are expected to be assertive, right? They're expected to be aggressive and independent. Women are expected to be agreeable. Which one of these things sounds more like a negotiation, right? So when men negotiate, they're behaving just in line with their gender norms. When women negotiate, we're defying gender norms. And this helps to explain why sometimes women are punished for negotiating. It's because we're seen as behaving outside the norm. We negotiate in different ways, right? Women are more likely to respond in kind to their partner's moves. So if your partner starts to concede, then we also start to concede. If your partner starts to compromise, we also start to compromise. We're also better at understanding our partner's interests. It's why, on average, women do better on this orange simulation than men do. It's because we ask better questions and we're more in tune with our partners, on average. All of these are on average, right? Okay, I just want to go ahead and say that. We're talking about prototypes, right? So the average woman and the average man are not stereotypes. There is plenty of overlap in these curves, but these are general differences. Men are also more likely to view the negotiation as persuasion, and they're more likely to haggle. So women tend to view it as a relationship, and men tend to view it as a battle. Of course, all three of these steps work together to mean that we reach different kinds of outcomes. Men perform better, maybe we'll see. Men tend to perform better in what we call distributive negotiations. So negotiations that are inherently competitive. These are things like negotiating the price of a car on a car lot, right? Where it's very clear that one party wants more and one party wants less. Now this gap closes when women have the same amount of experience as men do. So a big portion of this gap is due to the fact that women just tend to negotiate less. We get less practice, so we don't have the skills we need to do this. Men also run a greater risk of impasse because, on average, they become more emotional in negotiations, and they let those emotions cloud their judgment. They lose sight of what they want and need, and when they become angry, they end up reaching an impasse. So it's not all bad news. Women perform better when they're negotiating on behalf of others, either another person or a larger group. And women perform better in collaborative negotiations, one like this orange negotiation where there are opportunities to expand the pie. So these gender norms that mean that sometimes we get punished and sometimes we're less likely to negotiate do help us in some contexts. do have a bit more of a competitive feel. So what do we do about this? Right? These are all of the things that work against us and some of the things that work for us. How do we overcome it?
Run away.
Run away! That's one option. I think that the most common advice that we get, and the advice that Cheryl Sandberg gives, is to lean in, right? We should bend gender norms to our will. If we're punished for behaving aggressively, well, don't behave aggressively, right? Men can come into a salary negotiation and say, I deserve this raise because I worked for it. Maybe women instead need to say, this raise will be really important for my performance and will make me a better team member. Research suggests that it's more effective, that we claim more value and we're liked more afterward. And this is exactly what Sheryl Sandberg did when she negotiated her salary at Facebook. She's quoted as having said to Mark Zuckerberg, of course you realize that you're hiring me to run your deal team, so you want me to be a good negotiator. This is the only time you and I will ever be on opposite sides of the table. So she's found a way to frame the salary negotiations as being good for Facebook, and is also reminding Mark Zuckerberg about their relationship. And this works. It worked well for her, and it's a strategy that we as women can employ. We can try to continue to behave in gender normative ways in a negotiation. The problem is that sometimes the things that we need to do to survive in the world as it is are exactly the opposite of the things we need to do to change the world. Right? When we negotiate this way, we're conforming to those same gender norms that hold us back. We're reinforcing and upholding the gender norms that say that we need to behave collaboratively. And I will never begrudge a woman framing their negotiations this way because sometimes we have to do it. But I want to point out that it's not enough, because it doesn't make it easier for the women who come behind us. It doesn't make it easier for us to behave the same way that men do at the negotiation table. To change things, we have to think about structures. We have to think about systems. We have to think about the policies and practices we put in place in our organization, about the kinds of people we hire and how they're going to treat women who negotiate. We have to think about gender norms and how we can push back against them. We have to do all the things we're not doing when we do this, right? So, again, this is a strategy, and I'm not discouraging you from using it when you need to use it, but this is the most common advice you'll get, and I just want to show you that it's not enough. This is how we survive in the world. It's different than how we change the world. So I want you to be thinking about what you can do in your own organizations, in your own groups, to be creating structures that are more amenable to women who do want to negotiate like men, who want to be able to move through the business world in exactly the same way that our peers and colleagues do. I know that I'm running 1 minute up on time. I'm not going to an event after this, so if you want